Happy to help. Topic of the day, were there black Norse people? Let's get into it. Firstly, we all need to take a calm step back and realize the ancestors did not have a concept of black people, i.e. the modern racial categorization. The ancestors' primary focus was on cultural and social distinctions. In the saga, when the term black was used, it was used to describe people from other regions, not distinctly a race. Take Halfdan the Black, for example. Many thinks this is an indication of race. Firstly, ew, our first clue is his name, which roughly translates into half Dane. And he was called the Black because he had black hair. Now then, his exploits are questionable. Allegedly one of them sons of Ragnar Lothbrok. Another misconception comes from this man and his twin brother. The twin brothers often left out. Twin sons of a Norwegian merchant king and their indigenous Samoyed mother. And it would be this merchant king that coined the term Helgerskin, or Hellskin. Since their mother, the queen, was indigenous in nature, they had darker skin. Fun fact, their father came from a distinguished line that could trace their lineage all the way back to Ragnar Lothbrok as well. Meaning that we have mixed sons of Ragnar. And in fact, Geirmund went on to do some pretty legendary Viking stuff. Half Semitic people's Viking stuff. Feel free to look into it at your leisure. Their father's name was Hjor, and their mother was Lafvina. But you can also look into their father, the king's bloodline, because it would mean that they're half indigenous and half divine. But you see, Norse society had this problem. They were renowned for their extra special ships, and they needed extra special rigging. Many don't know where that rigging came from. Walrus skin. Well, walrus and seal. And wherever they could find those species, they would lay down roots. Whether the marriage was for diplomacy or love differed. After all, that's how our dark-skinned twins met according to the saga. Though it's speculated it began with diplomacy, it became love because he had no other concubines or wives after her. But a pattern begins to form. It's well documented about the relationships and marriages between the Norse and the Sami indigenous people. And it's well documented that all the young Norsemen that came across Norse society to participate in the Varangian Guard settled down with wives from Constantinople, which is primarily Greek at the time. And nobody talks about the Rus. The Rus were notorious for intermarrying with indigenous people and absorbing them. And at the end of the day, we mustn't forget that powerful men in Norse society were allowed to have multiple wives or concubines as long as they could afford it. It's going to hurt some feelings, but the ancestors were polyamorous, if they could afford it, per the Museum of Denmark. But I would be a hypocrite if I didn't state they didn't have a word for polyamory. They mostly referred to it as handmaidens, or handmaidens of the main wife. And in this equation, we find mostly the reason of why young men went abroad. Powerful men were taking up all the land and the women back home. They needed to find some of their own. Whether it's due to the poor rulership of a tyrant king, economic reasons, exploration, or seeking one's own saga, the ancestors would immigrate wherever there was opportunity. This is all well documented in regards to them immigrating to Ireland, Scotland, but especially Normandy. Normandy didn't just populate itself overnight. They took wives from France. The rest, they say, is history. And though the Rus were known for their trade routes and going all the way down to the region of Africa somewhat, there is no documentation of settlement, nor evidence. But I would say with this precedent and pattern, if given the opportunity, they sure would. In closing, we must be careful when we try to assert modern concepts on ancient times, lest you realize there's a lot more there that would make modern concepts very, very uncomfortable. It is possible. There's just no written or archaeological proof of such. Because we also can't forget, they got around. What happens on the trade route stays on the trade route if you catch my drift. And as the years stretch on and generations pass, I would like to inform everybody that there are now. Passion is passion. Love is love. Chill out. Maybe have a Snickers. Worry about something else. Just something to think about. I'll talk to you next time. Ah, cha 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 cha.